and Cloud9's undefeated support.
Thank you very much. I'm here with Smoothie after a ridiculous game, ridiculous series actually. You guys are now undefeated 4-0 after week 2, coming in this match against CLG. Do you think it'd be that easy?
Definitely not. I was expecting a lot less of a good start because of course we got a new jungler, but honestly he meshes with our team really, really well, and yeah, we've just been doing pretty good.
And it feels like in general, the infrastructure's really been beefed up for the team. I know in the bottom lane, you guys have a coach there as well. How's that experience been for you, and how's that helping your development and the bottom lane in general for Cloud9?
I think Kane is a new experience for me because that's the first time I've actually had like a individual, I guess, trainer. He helps out with like my vision control and just like the small things I didn't really think about, and it really does help out.
And I think it shows in your play because you've been looking so good so far in the first few weeks. But I want to ask you about drafting now moving in, because again, coaching is a big thing on Cloud9. We know Reaper's a great coach. Do you have a say in picks and bans? Is it a team thing? Is it mostly Reaper? Kind of, how does the Cloud9 drafting system work?
Honestly, the drafting system goes like, we just give him all the information about how our lanes go and like what, like if we're stronger in this matchup or whatever. And he just decides like at the end, what do we give a pick, and it's pretty good. He's a really good coach, and he gives us really good drafts.
It certainly shows because you guys have been on fire pretty much apart from your nail-biting series today. My last question for you, Smoothie. I've been hearing you guys comms a little more, and it's amazing to hear how vocal you are as a player, and you seem to have a much bigger voice and a lot of shot calling and team fighting is going on. Are you stepping up into more of a leadership role? How have you found like your new position on Cloud9 now that you've played with them for a year?
Yeah, definitely this year especially, I've been becoming more of a shot caller, I'd say, because when Meteos left, he brought with him like a lot of shot calling experience too. Like it was me and him that mostly did a lot of the talking. But now it's a new dynamic on the team, and we're all just like feeding information. But like the shot calling comes from like just compiling that information and then just going with the play that makes sense there. And that's where I could come in.
Well, you're doing a pretty good job so far. 4-0 still after 2 weeks of play. Cloud9 looking undefeated. Smoothie and team looking good. We're going to go back to the analyst desk to wrap up the day.
Thank you very much, Pastry Time. C9 keeping themselves in the undefeated first place position here. Didn't come easy for them, but what a way to end the weekend. A very exciting 3-game series between these two squads.
I mean, every series with C9 seems to be pretty good generally. They're a very interesting series. The one versus Dignitas last week was another good one. And I mean, here, overall, it was a great showing from CLG. I think they showed a lot better performance than they had showed in any of their previous series, up against a great opponent in C9, obviously. And I think they were just slightly outclassed over the course of the series, but great showing overall.
Let's talk about the draft a little bit, because coming into the day, we had high praise for C9's drafting, saying, hey, it's hard to find a weakness in this team, from the players as individuals to the drafting and the coaching staff around them. Let's talk about this Katarina pick, because although it was successful in that the victory came through, maybe not the best pick, given what CLG had drafted.
Right. I like the fact that when C9 goes for these kind of assassin-heavy counter picks, they often have other things set up in the comp to help it. So like a Shen, something like that. And the Shen was honestly the star of this. The Cat, not so much. I think the fact that the other team had, or that they already showed the Malzahar and Lulu's a common counter pick. Lulu is good into assassins as well, on top of the lockdown that comes in from things like a Varus, a Maokai. You also have an Orianna good for keeping people alive. It's just hard to play an assassin to that comp. And the Katarina, while it did stuff this game, you look and say, could a control mage have done just as much in holding out while you let Shen split push? I mean, the 1-3-1 did help at times, but it never felt super impactful.
I was about to say, it was a while until we saw Cat really start to do much of anything. Eventually that 1-3-1 came through, and we saw Jensen able to pressure Darsan on the Maokai. And then in the very late game, yeah, sure, there's a lot of damage coming out of Katarina, but that's to be expected when everyone's hitting 6 items. You mentioned the Shen. Before we get to the, sheer effectiveness of the Shen in the split push late game, let's take a look at this earlier fight. 24.5 minutes into the game, 3-0 for C9 in the mid lane.
Right, I mean, up until this point, CLG have been controlling the game, and the fact of the matter is that CLG's comp is way better at team fighting when they're in formation, but they are not here. Smoothie's off on the flank. He gets caught off by Jensen. They have to blow so many defensive things, keeping alive a frontliner who should not be in that position. That also ruins their formation, where everyone's stepping out of position to try and keep him alive. That he gets sniped by the arrow, and from there it's an easy chase down from C9, which basically lets them back into the game. And that's really the important thing to note, is that if CLG had never messed up their formation. All the initiation tools that come out of C9 hit the front line mostly, and it's very hard to start a fight where Cat feels free to go in.
Yep.
But as soon as you mess that up, as soon as you give up a flank, as soon as your frontliner's not there in time, it's very possible for the C9 comp to go off.
And CLG was in pretty solid control of the game up till that point. The 3-4-0 goes over to C9. They go over to the Baron. From there, boom, we're right back into the game. Now let's set up our game plan from C9 in terms of how we win the game. And it's going to be through that 4-1 to the eventual kind of 1-3-1 split push in Shen. Let's look at this fight. 41.5 minutes into the game. C9 3 for 3 near Baron. So even trade. But look at the setup. Shen in the bot lane here on the split.
Right, he's got the Zizarot left doing work, so if he has to TP in, he still has that pressure. Good steal attempt here. And ultimately, this is a very crazy team fight where there's some Shen taunts missing, and then Sneaky goes really big here and keeping his DPS up really, really high.
Yeah.
Able to focus down the frontliners, and then switches onto
Right
6A
here,
really
Sneaky.
well.
Just watch Sneaky through this.
Yeah, and then a great flash away as that comes in. Ultimately, they still get the follow-up and chase down on him, but he did so much work, it gives Jensen time to start going off as well, who also played the team fight extremely well. And then you're just left with the meat shields at the end of the fight bumping into each other.
Yeah, cooldowns come back up. The GAs popped all over the place. Contracts and Impact will now from here chase down essentially Darshan in that bot lane. Look at that gold graph.
I mean, that's a game that has some stuff happening.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it makes for a very exciting game, but, you know, from there we saw where the split push, the kind of pressure that Shen was able to, provide for C9, that even in those even 3 for 3 or maybe 2 for 3 trades, C9 was still getting things on the map.
Right, and I think that's where you really see the Shen come through. I mean, that fight was at 41 minutes. There's basically another 10 minutes. I think there was another Elder Dragon fight and another Baron fight that was almost the exact same game situation where someone on C9's side is generating pressure in a side lane, which forces CLG to take suboptimal engages, and then they are not able to win the fights as hard as they need to. So then, you know, there's these chase downs happening where you have Zizarots finishing the game.
Right, absolutely. Player of the game this time going around to Impact for that Shen. Once again, with the split push pressure, kind of allowing C9, giving them the breathing room, if anything, to extend the game to that 49-minute mark where they'll eventually win off of one good team fight. And at that point in the game, I mean, the casters were saying, you heard both Freak talking about it, CLG or C9 at this point with inhibs down, whoever wins the next fight wins the game. It went in C9's favor.
Yeah, I mean, that Elder Dragon fight and a couple other close ones, whereas like if CLG just managed to just barely win that fight a little harder, they can maybe snowball the entire game. And ultimately, they came up short. Their early game was good. I like the comp that they came up with here. They didn't think, oh, we have to put Darshan on another split pusher. They take the Maokai when they can get it. It works out fine. And the ultimate problem was just that they were a little off in their coordination.
And to be honest, it's a bit of a bummer to have to say, all right, CLG's now 1-3 on the split after a series like that, up against the best team in the league here, undefeated 4-0. They take them to 3 games, and all 3 of them are close, even the 2 losses.
Yeah, I mean, it feels bad in a little way because you're expecting to feel better about, you know, oh, we played a really close series, but when you look at your rank, you know, your standing, you can't be too happy. You're in the bottom half of the league. But it is still early on in the season, and CLG improving is nice. But like we said, tend to play up to their competition or down to it. So this might have just been a good day. We need to see a repeat performance next week.
Yeah, I think the big thing here is that the bot lane did step up today as compared to prior performances, as well as Huhi. So if those 3 can kind of become a more consistent pocket, then all that's left to work on is really that top side of the map. How does Darshan become effective in this tank meta where he seems to be a little lackluster still? Is it by completely diverting from it? I mean, you mentioned we've now seen the Swain, we've seen even the Sims. I know that's not a carry top laner, but it's something different than the normal, the normal set. We've seen the Jaces, the Kleds, the Kennons. Like, can Darshan reach to any of these champions?
I mean, I don't want to tell CLG, you know, how to run everything because
you should tell them how to play the game from start to
Here's what
finish.
you would do. No, I think getting Darshan on a couple more matchups in LCS where he is on these kind of counter picks to tanks would even potentially free up some draft for the rest of the team if people are getting scared of things, you know, like his Trundle, like his if he started playing a Swain or Fiora, Jace, these kind of things. We've seen him play Jace once already, but if he had a couple effective performances on these kind of more split push focused champions, then you start taking pressure off Huhi's champ pool, which is pretty specialized in a way. So I think you could start freeing each other up a lot.
Yeah, well, even with the loss, CLG can look at this as improvement, move into week 3 with a little bit more confidence. Maybe they've righted the ship and they're on their way to some victories for Cloud9. Yes, they're still undefeated, but they might be feeling a little bit iffy after having gone as far as they did in this 3-game series. Impact picked up player of the game this time around. Let's see who else stood out as players this week. 2 mid laners and 3 junglers walk away with 2 Player of the Game honors each. And over on our leaderboard, no one player stands out just yet. But yeah, you can see here this week's leaders, Bjergsen, Ignori, Froggen, Moon, and Dardoch. I mean, those 3 junglers definitely went off. Bjergsen, you'll have to remember, played on Friday and Saturday, so we didn't get a glimpse of him today.
I mean, Acadian's not on that leaderboard, but Acadian had great performances too. So, I mean, the young junglers in the league right now are looking really, really good.
Right, here we are after week 2. The likes of Jensen, Hai, and Someday all share 3 Player of the Game accolades. And for anyone who was doubting Hai coming into this split, 3 Player of the Games here in week 2 and a squad that's 3-1 right now. I don't think anyone was going to guess that would happen.
Yeah, I definitely didn't underrate Hai coming into this split at all. No, not me.
Well, and actually, funnily enough, there's Moon right at the end of that, right? So you got 2 FlyQuest players sitting at the top of the table there when it comes to Player of the Game honors. Time now, though, to pull up the team standings to see how the teams rank at the end of the week. Cloud9 is our only first-place team. They're followed by FlyQuest, who joins Phoenix 1 and TSM in second. And the rest of the teams fall into the middle of the pack ahead of Envy, who are still searching for their first win. Next week, we return with more North American LCS starting on Friday with Flame and Immortals looking to take down Phoenix 1. After that, Team Envy will go up against Team Liquid. If that's not enough League Esports, be sure to tune in to the Challenger stream this Wednesday. What about these 2 matchups, though? Which one's the big ticket for you?
Surprisingly, actually, Team Liquid versus Envy. I mean, I think Immortals versus Phoenix 1 will probably have a little bit higher quality gameplay, but I think
there's a battle at the bottom of the table.
The battle at the bottom of the table is extremely important for a team in Team Liquid who's looking like they're a step behind the rest of the league right now in terms of their synergy. And I mean, by week 3, if you're still losing to a team that is expected to struggle, then you might find yourself outside the playoff picture pretty quickly.
Right, and that's the thing. Again, you already mentioned it at the end of the Envy series. We have to remember, Lyra's only been here for a couple days, right? So with a full week of practice under their belt, this might be up against a Team Liquid roster their best opportunity to get a win here in the early weeks of the split and make, or rather create some space for themselves when they get to the second half. Because right now, at 0-4, you got to already start thinking about, we got to get ourselves out of that 7th place spot. We got to get up there.
Yeah, and I mean, TL still has like a lot of difficult matchups coming up. They haven't had, the hardest strength of schedule overall. It's been, they have FlyQuest and TSM, 2 good teams, but then they also have played CLG and a couple other teams. So they need to start putting together wins because they were expected to be a playoff team and they don't look like it.
Well, those 2 games come to you on Friday. If you missed any of the action this week, make sure to tune in after the show as Kobe, Azael, and myself are going to be doing NA LCS tonight. Now for myself, the casters, and the entire live broadcast crew, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week. Good night.